Dive into a conversation with Jane Pellicciotto, a gifted graphic designer who stepped into the art of jewelry making. Coming from Portland, Oregon, Jane works with a wide range of materials, including polymer clay, and is not afraid to get her hands dirty. Listen to this brand new episode of the Polymer Week Podcast as we explore Jane's fascination with patterns, textures, and the life around her, where she finds most of her inspiration. Hello, Jane.
Hello, Lucy. It's nice to finally meet you.
I just wanted to say
in person.
That. Yeah, I'm very happy because we had so many wonderful talks and chats, and it's just beautiful. The face-to-face interaction is different, right?
Absolutely.
You came here from States. Did you had a nice journey here?
Yeah, it's long, but
it's worth it. Is it? Is it worth it?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, easy. I mean, easy. Just long. Yeah. Hard to sleep on an airplane.
Yeah, definitely.
And traveling from the West Coast of the United States is different. It's another 3 hours. So the last time I did go to Europe in 2017 and a couple other times. So it's a longer journey than when I used to travel from the East Coast. So, but it's great. And I love this country, what I've seen of it so far. So
I'm happy that you are happy as well in this place. So you came for the event. We have you here for the Polymer Week event, but you are also going to be the speaker. Shall we say the story that last year we tried and we were almost there, and then you realized you do not have your passport ready? I
know, it was the day before, so I think I was already packed. Or maybe I have, when I pack for shows, I wait until the last minute, which sounds bad, but I have a document with many columns, and every single thing I have to bring, down to thumbtacks, is on there, so that when I pack, it goes fairly quickly. But I found out that I didn't have enough days left on my passport before it would expire. It had to be 3 months, and so I found out the day before I was leaving to come here that I couldn't come. Yeah. So that I felt very stupid as well to not know that, because I've traveled internationally before. But then when I posted on Facebook about my error, many of my friends thanked me because they were like, oh my gosh, I have to go out of town or out of the country, and I haven't looked at my passport in ages. And so a lot of people, only like 2 people out of 20 some people knew about that rule. So I didn't feel so stupid after all. And I had what we call a staycation, which is, do you have a word like that?
No, but I know what
you know what it means?
Yeah. Like
you vacation in your home. Yeah. So, anyway, it worked out fine, because I think, I was supposed to do this Museum of Art show in Philadelphia, which is on the East Coast of the United States, in Pennsylvania, and I was only going to have 1 day in between from when I returned home from here, and I had to get on another plane, repack everything. And so in a way, it was a bit easier to do that. Yeah. And I'm doing the same show again this year, but there's 3 weeks apart.
So everything worked out.
Everything worked out fine, except for the loss of a lot of money. But but that's, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you make it for the second time. And you will be on the stage. You will be sharing your story and your knowledge. But when it comes to the very beginning of your journey with polymer clay, can you tell us how did it start?
I think so when I started making jewelry seriously, which was not that long ago, I started as a metalsmithing. So I worked in silver and some other metals, but mostly silver. And the funny thing about polymer clay is that there's all this color that had exploded, and I'm not really a color person. But I feel like starting with polymer clay, after working with silver, and then also enamel on copper, I think I just felt the need to work with something softer. And it turns out I had used polymer clay many years ago. In fact, a friend of mine when I told her I started to work with polymer clay, she sent me a photograph of a pair of earrings and a necklace that I made for her years ago. And I was so embarrassed. I mean, it's not that it's that terrible, but I didn't know what I was doing. I know there were probably books and all sorts of stuff, but I definitely didn't have a pasta machine, and I just like bought some clay and messed around with it. But I'm a very tactile person, and I cook a lot, and I garden, and I think that there was just something that I just felt like I needed to work with something that felt, just yummier and softer to work with. It's something that kind of resembles, aside from cranking a machine, it's also quieter. And I realize that I'm kind of sensitive to noise. Like I don't do silversmithing, like hammering, like forging, but it's still just noisy. And I think that I like the gentleness of polymer clay. I guess it was around 2018 or 19, I think, that I just it's funny, I don't even remember, because I've worked with a variety of materials, and I even have some, I don't know what your word in Czech is, but linoleum, the countertop material. And I have all these pieces ready to work with that I've already mounted on, because they're very thin. I bought a box on eBay of vintage sample tiles, that they use in interior design places. And I've mounted them onto wood, and I have a little saw, and I still want to work with that. So I kind of bounce around to different materials, but I wish I could remember what made me, I know. I went to, I think I bought a little bit of polymer clay, and then in the city of Seattle, which is in Washington State, north of me, they have a metals symposium every year with really incredible speakers, and there's a silent auction, and normally I just don't even look at that stuff, but there. A silent auction where you put your what you. So there was a toaster oven, and all this polymer clay, and all the tools. It was a whole kit, and I don't know what the value was, some $200 and some dollars, something like that. And I put my name on it, and I thought, this is great. This will get me going, and I stood by it so that nobody would. I didn't want to walk away and have somebody outbid me, and before the time came up, and so I just stood there, like watching the piece of paper. I think someone else put their name, and then I immediately outbid them, and so I went home with this whole setup, and I was ready to go, and I just started to, play around. So, and I think I told you that I also teach people to make pasta, but it's all hand pasta, not even through the machine, not egg-based pasta. And I think that I just, my hands need to kind of just really feel what I'm doing, and I don't feel like I get that as much with metal. So that started.
I think I'm gonna sign up for your class.
We can do a Zoom. I actually, during the pandemic, some friends on the East Coast wanted to learn pasta making, and so we did a Zoom chat. Yep. So I had like a different monitor set up, and then I had my phone looking down at, and then they had a party with 30 people, and she made pasta for 30 people. And I was like, what are you doing? That's just crazy. But, so they did it after we did the class. They went on their own, and she just kept making batch after batch after batch. But so it's fun. We can do a Zoom chat sometime.
Yeah, definitely. But I would prefer face-to-face. Like, that would be fun.
Okay, that would be fun.
Italian village.
You can come visit me.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, I'm really curious, because you said that you played with the clay. You didn't even know that it's polymer clay. Then you found it again for the second time. But how did you connect to the clay community? Like, when did you find it?
And I haven't really that much. I mean, it's only been... I'm trying to think of how I found out about you, because So part of it, even though I love polymer clay, like I don't, like people say, oh, you're a polymer artist. And then I say, no, I'm not, like, for two reasons. One, because even I feel like I shouldn't say this at a polymer clay conference,
You can.
but that to me, like the material is sort of irrelevant. Like whatever, to me, the aesthetic and the design is more important. And so whatever I need to get there. And I will say, though, lately I've been defaulting to using polymer clay almost exclusively. And then people say, "Oh, are you not working in metal anymore?" But it's just because there's so much that you can do, and I want to keep exploring. And it's just easier for me to go over to my polymer clay table than go over to my metals table, you know? So, but also I feel like I don't call myself a polymer artist because there are people who've been working with it for decades and they're experts at their craft, and I'm really not, you know? I feel like my design is the more important thing, and I haven't taken any classes really for polymer clay, and so it's I feel like my technical skills, you know, it's like I have an idea, I have something in my head. I know this happens to a lot of people, and then it's just frustrating because I'm like, well, how am I going to connect these now? Like, I just want them connected, but I don't want to, you know, and I also don't really plan things out very much. I mean, even though I've been a graphic designer for 30 years, and that involves a lot of, you know, planning and strategy, I find with the jewelry making, I just abandon that. I just kind of sit down and I make. And I think maybe because of my age and that I've spent my lifetime like looking at things, like in my head, I already know kind of what I like and what I picture what I want to make, but I don't plan everything out from beginning to end. And so sometimes I make pieces and then I'm like, oh God, I wish I had thought about, you know, I mean, with polymer clay, it's fairly forgiving because you can add a component and bake it a fifth time or something. But I think it's, I mean, I don't need to talk about what is pleasurable about polymer clay because we all know, you know. And I think like what I also like is I think I'm more of a process person. So the end thing is, yeah, that's good to finish something, but I like what unfolds in the process. And I feel like with polymer clay specifically, more interesting things happen along the way to making something else, unlike other materials, you know? So in that way, I think that's also why I keep gravitating more towards it. And I have all these other materials I want to work with, but I keep avoiding them because you know, partly it also requires a different technical skill, but like wood or I became interested in like transforming beach plastic, and I did take a workshop. I'll give you the name of this gal later because her work looks as if it could be polymer clay or ceramic or porcelain, and what she does with beach plastic is so interesting. And I like the sustainable, you know, issue with that, but you know, you can have too many different materials too.
I think it's your great advantage that you combine them together in this way. Like not really being focused just on clay, but your artwork stands out because of that, definitely. You know, like I saw you have wire here, some wooden pieces, you know, all these things together creates, would you say like mixed media artist that you are?
I feel like mixed media is more really deliberately combining materials kind of, I think, in an unexpected way. Actually, there's going to be a part in my presentation about that. Like, in fact, you sent me a list. Remember, I asked you about a list of people. That was for a presentation that I didn't end up giving. But I forget her name. She does the embroidery, the stitching.
Yeah. I am trying to find out the name as well in my mind, and I know she's from Poland.
Well, and I have her name on my slide. I just can't pronounce. I think it's Tanya, or it's some common sounding name, but I can't pronounce her last name. It starts with a W.
Wozniak or something
like that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more of a real, you know, mixed media.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of times my things end up being like, you know, I have used some like wide fabric ribbon to stitch pieces to. I haven't made a piece like that in a while, but maybe some of the pieces that you've seen use this old vintage telephone wire that's all striped colors, and I combined it with wood. And then sometimes I would paint some of the facets of the wood. So that's fun. I just haven't used it with the polymer clay yet.
I remember when we talked the last time and also at the society during the session, you talk so much about the visual aspects you see around you in those urban spaces and in your city. So can you let us know a bit about your approach? Because it's really interesting how you look at the inspiration around and how you're able to transform it through your artwork.
Yeah, I mean, probably like a lot of people, there isn't like a direct correlation, you know, from one thing. Like even like putting these presentations together, sometimes I put, like on my presentation, the first slide is something I saw in the street, and then I have it with a brooch that I made, and they have similar qualities, but it's not like I saw that image, saw that in the street, and then I made the thing. It's usually, you know, I think just like anybody, unconscious, or, you know, we have all these things rolling around in our head, and how do we know when the connection was made? But I think we just absorb it all, and then it comes out. And I think the thing that's interesting to me about the urban environment is that I don't have to go far to find inspiration. In fact, usually it's things that are, some people might think were rather ugly, you know, or I like to call it accidental art. And I think that actually even gets to the topic of my presentation for tomorrow about surprise, is that I like to discover and just sort of trip over things that kind of delight me. And so somehow then those ideas make their way, or hopefully they make their way into your art, but not in a really literal way, kind of like the way that, you know, I know many people who use nature as inspiration, which is pretty obvious, but some people do a really literal direct translation, and other people, you know, it's like thinking about like the gills on a mushroom. And actually the polymer artist who you had last year, you know, her, her you know, her pieces resemble, I don't know if that's her inspiration.
Yeah, mushrooms.
Oh, it is. But they're so abstracted. And I think like, I like to think about, I like this word like design truth, like the inherent design truth of just anything. I mean, these could be like mountains, you know, or like you look at mountains and like, what is the inherent design truth in a mountain range? You know, it's like repeating forms. And I think that I appreciate that because the less literal it is, the more that you invite the viewer to make their own interpretation. Yeah. Because it could also look like waves, you know, like in an ocean and not mushrooms. And so I think if you leave a little bit of it mysterious, mysterious would be a good topic for. Anyway, if you leave a little bit of it mysterious, then the person can fill the gaps in for themselves, you know.
And get a certain interpretation based on there. Well, when it comes to your artwork itself, you've been selling that at shows, and you've been making a living through artwork as well. So is there a certain advice for those who would love to do the same and kind of figure out their way to being a full-time artist and find a certain freedom in that as well?
You know, so it's interesting because since this is such an international conference, like I don't know what opportunities people have for selling their work wherever they live. So the Czech Design Shop in Prague, I spent quite a bit of time talking to someone who worked there. In fact, he went to school here in Pilsen, and he's a ceramic artist. And I was asking him, you know, how do people sell their work? Are there shows, you know? And he said, oh, well, there might be 5 or 6 or something. And I thought, in the whole country, like, I don't know if I mean, his English was very good, but I thought, you know, we have thousands. I mean, so
you have thousands shows. Really?
I mean,
Wow.
there have to be, thousands.
Yeah, that's huge.
In all different ranges, from high end to, crafty little things. And we have, some websites where you can apply for these shows. And I mean, they're all over the place. So I think that that's something that is has worked well for me, because I mean, some people I think are quite successful at selling their work online on their own website. And I do have a shop on my website, but that really requires a lot of, it requires getting your newsletter out, and also building a mailing list. I think that early on, maybe a couple of years ago, some people had really good success with Instagram, but then all the algorithms changed.
Yeah.
And I've heard people talk about this before, that that really ruined it for a lot of people. But this is where one bit of advice I would give is to not put all your eggs in one basket, because I think, like, I see that a lot too. A lot of artists especially will have a website designed like 15 years ago, and then I might come across their art, I go search for them, and all I see is a Facebook page, Instagram, and I maybe find their website buried deep, and it's so old, they haven't updated it in years. And I know that it's hard, but I think the problem is that if you just keep dumping all of your images in these social media sites, if they're not around forever, and you haven't, your website should be your main thing, and then all these other things should be the constellation around it, and then they have to work in concert with each other. But I will admit that I only have so much bandwidth, right? So I don't get my newsletter out frequently enough. But sometimes, but I've also been able to build a mailing list up because I do shows. It's very hard to do that if you don't have people in person. So when I do a show, I put my mailing list, sign up, and people add their names. And
you connect those people together, right, into your own little platform.
Like I use an e-newsletter service, so I can include all their names there. And sometimes, I send my newsletter out and just to say, here's my upcoming shows. Sometimes I'm like, here's new work. So it isn't always pushing my work for sale. I like to use my newsletter for not always selling something, And then I've had my work in some galleries, but I have pulled all of that work pretty much because it's just not worth it for me to do that. And then I sell in an online craft marketplace that I probably couldn't do this if it weren't for them, because it's called Artful Home, and you have to apply like you do for a show, but it's all handmade, artist-based work, and I do quite well on there, especially this year. So it's allowed me to, but I still do my graphic design work.
So it's a bit of pieces all together.
One method that I don't feel like I can employ, but there are quite a lot of jewelers who use this method where they create collections. Well, Heidi does that a bit, although I think she has kind of slowed down her working on her earring drops. But there are a lot of jewelers in the U.S., mostly who work in metal and gemstones, and they create all this hype, I'm releasing this collection on such and such day. If you're not on my mailing list, make sure you are. And then they tease out, little bit by little bit, and by the time the release comes out, they sell everything. And I just feel like it would just not work with me. I mean, I think it works with people who work with gemstones, because maybe they only bought 10 and this is it, and they're in a ring and they're all going to be gone, so you better grab yours. And some people can do quite well. I know a couple people who do those releases, but I know I would never stick to it. You know, I just know myself well enough to know that if I say, oh, I'm going to release this collection in, a month, it's not going to happen. So,
yeah.
So that's one method that I find that some people can be quite successful using the two rules of scarcity, to make it seem like this is an exclusivity. Like there's only 10 of these, and maybe they give their special best customers early access, right? That's something that they do too.
Yeah.
But I can't get my head around that.
I get that. Like we are all made for something different in the way. Well, if you look back at your life and the past years and navigating this life as an artist / graphic designer and getting that freedom, but also a lot of responsibilities, do you feel that it's worth the pain that it comes with?
I do. I feel like I'm pretty happy. I mean, so I'm 58. I started the jewelry at 50. So this was a later in life. I mean, I've always made I've done ceramic work. I've always made jewelry, but I didn't have any metalsmithing skills. I just put things together that I and so starting later in life was interesting because I felt like rather than just kind of dabbling, I was ready to put a body of work into the world. And for better or worse, maybe a little bit of my ego is there, but I wanted to get the sort of seal of approval from the so-called people who, which is kind of stupid because, but I have already participated in the country's 2 best shows, which seems very strange because I didn't have that kind of, to me it just feels like, why me? How did that happen? This person's work is so much better. That person's work is so much better, and I don't really know why. I don't think I'm doing anything very special, and but it feels kind of good, and yeah, I'm happy with my. Yeah, we talked about relationships and stuff. It's just like I have my 2 cats and I have my freedom and I can do whatever I want. And so it feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I wake up and I just want to walk into my studio every day. So
yeah, and a lot of people dream about it actually. So yeah, that's wonderful.
But I also, and maybe we've talked about this, but I really kind of hate when I see somebody post on social media, oh, I'm so lucky I get to do what I love every day. And I don't like that because I feel like it perpetuates this false idea that just because you're in a creative profession that is just fun all the time. And I also think it's dangerous for artists to do that because it's hard enough to get people to pay you what you feel like you're worth. And so if you make it sound like you're just living your dream, it kind of can create an idea that, you don't need money for what you do. But I also think that it makes other people feel like if they haven't found the thing that they love doing, there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with just going to a job and getting a paycheck and then using your free time to do whatever you want. There's a lot of pride that a person can take in just doing a decent job, whatever it is, even if it seems boring, being nice to your coworkers or whatever. So I don't really like to idealize the artist's life because I think it's more that I just need to make stuff and it's just the way I'm hardwired,
Well, your journey and your approach and also your contemporary artwork, all of that is very inspiring. So thank you for being honest. And also I feel like that you're very humble about your work. It's really incredible and what you've been doing amazes me a lot. So thank you for your time and thank you for being on the Polymer
Thank you.
Podcast.
It's fun. It's fun to sit here in a person.